Hi everyone, this is Ashley with CTR Digitals. I'm going to show you a tutorial on how to use a few of my actions. I'm going to be using my grays and whites action, my background smoothing action, and my frequency separation action. The frequency separation action I typically use for newborn skin, maternity skin, newborn wraps and dresses just to help smooth that out. The background smoothing I use to smooth my seamless paper backdrops that I use in my studio. And the grays and whites action I use just to get a truer gray or white for the background in my images, or even if dads or my models are wearing like white shirts or white gowns or white dresses. I even use it on that sometimes just to get a truer gray or white in case your white balance was a little off, or if your camera shoots a little bit more red, or whatever problem you have with that. I use this on almost all my images from the studio. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my frequency separation action first. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press play. I already have these loaded in here obviously, but if you need help loading your actions into Photoshop, I have a video for that as well in my YouTube channel that I will link in the description. So I went ahead and pressed play on my frequency separation action. This is just going to tell you to use the lasso tool to select the area that you want to smooth out and then press play. So you can go ahead and press stop. I'm just going to zoom in, so it's going to make it a little bit easier for me to edit here. Now if you have any big blemishes, she had a couple more bigger pores on her face here that I got rid of before using that. You just want to get rid of any bruises on their arms or legs or wherever you're wanting to smooth. I would fix that, use your healing tool and fix that first. So I'm just going to use you want to stay away from the hair lines, like don't go into the hair like this. Avoid the eyes. This is just, you want to select just where you're wanting to smooth out. So I'm going to avoid the eyes and the hair. There, and then I'm going to go ahead and press play. And now this is going to say, so if you were done, if you just wanted to do the face and you're done, you can just leave it at that. But if there's another part of the image that you're wanting to smooth out, you can select with your lasso tool. Again, go to filter and select Gaussian. Once you have smoothed to your liking, set the opacity of the second layer to 82% and flatten. And then this is just letting you know that there's a tutorial you can watch that is listed in the description in the shop. Go ahead and press stop. Okay, and now I'm gonna come down here and I'm gonna do her neck and her chest, and then I want to show you, so you could go up and go to filter Gaussian, and now if that's not doing enough, you can go into blur and Gaussian itself, but I want you to see right here where I selected outside, it kind of distorted that right there. So that's why we don't want to do that. So go up to edit, undo Gaussian, and I'm going to reselect that. So you want to stay away from the edges. There we go. And then filter Gaussian. And you can go around and you can do this everywhere you need to. And now say that you want it. So when I do my dress, I like to smooth a little bit more. I'm going to zoom out. So if I did this part of the wrap right here, and I went up to filter and Gaussian and it didn't smooth it out as much as I wanted, now undo that. You can just go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and this is already automatically set, but you can take it down some if it's doing too much. Bring it up to do more. I typically don't really do any more than like 40 is kind of my max. If you do too much, if you watch right here in this area by her arm, it's gonna start to bleak those colors together. So you never want to do too much, and that's also why you want to stay away from the edges. So I'm gonna select that again real quick, go a little bit further away from her arm, blur, Gaussian blur, and I'm going to do about 25. I usually do about 25 on the wrap. And then, oops, I selected her arm. It'll get a lot easier once you start doing it a little bit more. And then I would go around the whole image I'm going to zoom out here. I'm going to do this quickly, but more quickly than I would if I was just editing the image. Because I think you guys kind of get the gist of it now. Do little sections at a time. You don't want to cross over the lines too much, because then it'll start to, here, I just did it right there so I can show you what it did to this right here. It's like too sharp. You don't really want it to look like that. So I would go like this and avoid that crease right there. Okay, I don't think I did this part of her arm, and I don't want that to be 25, so I'm going to go back into Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and put that back down to 15 or 10 or 4, however much you want to use. And then make sure you go to Select and Deselect, or grab your marquee and click on your background so your subject isn't selected anywhere. I'll go back to my, just get her foot. Okay, and then this, I say 82%, so the second layer, which is right here. So as you can see, as we start dragging this down, it's going to take a little bit of the softness away, and it's going to add a little bit more sharpness. I'll put it all the way back up again. I'll go down a little bit. As you can see, her eyes are a little bit softer. I typically do around 80 to 82%. I think that's a good number. Okay, and then you can flatten, and that is how I use the frequency separation action. If I go up, kind of before I did any of that, you can see before and after. Smoothed everything out, but it still made it sharp. It didn't over smooth her skin. There's obviously a bunch of different ways you can smooth skin in Photoshop, but people ask me, and that's the way that I use it. So I wanted to create an action for everyone to be able to use that. Okay, so now I'm going to use my background smoothing action. Next, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press that and play. And that's just going to say to use the magnetic lasso tool or the select subject button to select around the subject and then press play. Go ahead and press stop. Lasso tool, magnetic lasso tool is in here too if you want to use that. I'm going to go to my quick selection and use my select subject button. Wait for that to work. And then use your plus and minus tools up here to select any part that Photoshop didn't. It doesn't have to be perfect, but make sure you select at least most of your background. Oops. Okay, go ahead and press play. Wait for that to work. Okay, and now it says to use a soft white brush to brush on the blur around the subject. Use a soft black brush to brush off of the subject if needed. Adjust your opacity, flatten your image, and then we can use the action that I have in there to reduce banding, because sometimes adding blur to your photos can add banding to that as well, unfortunately. So we're going to grab our brush, oops, our white brush, soft, at 100% opacity, and I'm going to use a bigger brush first and kind of feather in, brush around here. If you get it on your subject a little bit, that's okay, because we can go back in and brush it off. Make my brush a little bit smaller. You don't want to get too close to her, but close enough to where it's just kind of feather that blur in there. And then if you press the backslash key on your keyboard, it'll show you, white brush, it'll show you where you have and haven't brushed that on yet. That's the backsplash key. Okay, so now if we zoom in just a little bit, it's on her in certain places, so I'm going to switch to my black brush. I'm going to use a much smaller brush, And I'm just gonna, you don't want to do it right around her because then you're going to cause a halo. But I just want to brush just enough to get it off of the areas that it brushed on. Too much here. And then depending on how much you're needing to smooth the background, depends on your opacity. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to drag down the opacity just a little. Maybe do like 85. Okay. And then you can go ahead and flatten your image. Now, I made an action for removing banding in here. In case nobody watches the tutorial, but if you're watching, if instead of using the banding action, you can just click right here on this part of the backdrop, go up to filter, noise, add noise, and I typically use anywhere from 1.5 to 2% to create that noise on the backdrop. It'll automatically do it for you if you do it that way. Or if we undo that, you can flatten if it's easier for you to do that, and click on the bye bye banding action, press play, and this is just telling you to use a soft black brush to brush the noise off of the subject. Press stop, your black brush at 100% opacity, and just brush it off of your subject. And then flatten. And the noise, if it's too much, it looks like it might be, yeah. Added too much noise there, so I'm just gonna bring it down to where it's not too much, but it also corrects my banding if I had any. Okay, go ahead and flatten. Okay, so we did the skin, we smoothed the background. You can just add a texture overlay too if smoothing isn't something that you really want to take the time to do. Adding a texture is also a good idea. So my grays and whites action, I'm going to click that and I'm going to press play. I'm going to show you a couple different ways to use this because so you can use it, so watching the tutorial is always good because I can show you different ways to do certain things that aren't easily explainable in the action itself if you're just going to go use it in Photoshop. So you can press play on that. And it's just going to tell you to use a soft white brush to brush onto your gray layer, which is meaning whatever you want to correct. Adjust opacity if needed. So press stop, white brush, 100% opacity, and you can start brushing on that layer and see how that's making that a truer gray, and it's removing a lot of the red and magenta. And now you would have to use a small brush around your subject and do that until the whole image was complete if you wanted to do that completely by hand. So now I'm going to show you a different way to use the action, which is going to help you with a faster workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete that gray action like we never used it. I'm going to go over to my quick selection tool here, select subject, wait for that to work. I'm going to use my plus and minus tools to fix this again. I'm not sure why Photoshop isn't grabbing her wrap. And this doesn't have to be perfect, but again, as close as you can get it is best. Okay, and then I'm going to duplicate the layer, create a layer mask, press Control plus I or Command plus I on your keyboard to invert that layer, and then click back over here on the layer, and then press to play the action. Press stop and see how that just applied it to the background without you having to do anything else. But if you zoom in, so you're still going to have to clean up just the edges that it made black and white that you don't want black and white. So you would come over here to your mask over here and use your black and your white brush to brush on and brush off. So I'm going to use black first just to see, and you can just go around the image and see, okay, did the black and white, or not black and white, I'm sorry, the grays and whites action apply anywhere that I don't want it. See right here, just brush it off the wrap there, brush it off the wrap here. These are just the parts of the image that weren't selected when I said you could go back in and fix them. See, it selected her foot right there. We definitely don't want that to be gray. And this is much faster just doing the parts that Photoshop didn't select than going around the entire image and brushing on and off. Just selecting or fixing up the edges here, and that's it. Okay. So before and after with that, and that's done, and then you can flatten your image. So that's with all 3 actions used. If you have any questions, you can send me a message. If you are a studio photographer, I would love for you to join my group on Facebook. I will link that in the description as well.